The entire French nation is in peril of invasion and destruction. The British Expeditionary Force is fighting desperately to cover its retreat. Can Hitler's forces really be stopped? What will Britain do if the French collapse? And why did Churchill order British troops to retreat from France anyway? Find out in this episode of World War II in real time. In our last episode, we saw the British Expeditionary Force, or BEF, racing back to the coast after being pushed back by German forces. With the fall of France seemingly imminent, the British High Command realized that the only way to save the BEF was to order them to retreat across the Channel to Britain. Even then, the troops would face almost certain destruction. But with France falling into German hands, there would be no friendly territory for them to retreat to. As the troops raced towards the coast, they had to pass through the French city of Lille. This vital city was a key part of the German plan to finish off the BEF. If they could take Lille, the Germans would cut off the last remaining supply routes to the British and destroy them. However, the BEF managed to hold out in Lille and raced across the Channel with only a few thousand casualties. Overall, the entire operation was a success, but it came at a tremendous cost. Almost 400,000 troops had been evacuated. Now, the French were furious. They had been expecting help from the British, and the British had just abandoned them without even saying goodbye. To make matters worse, the British had taken nearly all of the available shipping with them, leaving virtually nothing for the French. In fact, the Dunkirk evacuation had stripped France of 85% of its available shipping. Over 2 million refugees crowded into the remaining 15%, trying to escape the advancing Germans. The result was a disaster. Hundreds of thousands of people were crammed into tiny coastal towns, forcing them to sleep in the streets, often without food or water. Many people died during the evacuation. Meanwhile, the French leadership was in disarray. The aging Prime Minister Paul Reynaud had resigned, and the new government was led by Marshal Philippe Pétain. Pétain was a World War I hero who had led the French to victory at the Battle of Verdun. However, he was completely out of his depth in World War II. As the Germans advanced, he ordered the French to fight a defensive war, which was a disaster. On June, the Germans demanded that the French surrender. Pétain agreed, but he wanted to negotiate peace terms. He dispatched 2 trains full of officials to Berlin to meet with Hitler. The Germans agreed to armistice, but only on the condition that the French allowed German troops to occupy all of northern France. Pétain accepted these terms, and the fighting ended. Officially, France was now split in 2. The Germans occupied the north and a small part of the west around Marseille, while the rest of France was controlled by the Vichy regime in the south. But what about the Free French? Charles de Gaulle had been broadcasting from London the whole time, calling for the French to resist the German occupation. However, very few people were listening to him. Most of the French people were either in the north, where they were being occupied by the Germans, or in the south, where the armistice was still in effect. Only a small number of French troops and citizens had made it to London with Gaulle. These Free French forces would later play an important role in the war, but for now, they were a minor sideshow. What happens next is up to you. Will you guide the Free French forces in their fight against the Germans? Or will you lead the British as they stand alone against the might of the German war machine? Click on one of these 2 options to decide. If you chose to lead the Free French, you've got a tough job ahead of you. The odds are stacked against you. But if you can rally the French people, you might just be able to turn the tide of war. Your first task is to convince the British that you are a viable leader. They are skeptical of your abilities, but if you can prove yourself, they may come around. To do that, you need to raise an army. Luckily, there are plenty of French soldiers in Britain who are eager to join you. They are tired of being stuck in a country that doesn't want them, and they want to fight for a cause greater than themselves. With an army at your back, you're ready to take on the Germans. Your first order of business is to set up a government in exile. You'll need to find a place where you can operate freely and safely. Luckily, there are plenty of places in Britain that can provide you with the facilities you need. Once you have a base of operations, you can start recruiting soldiers. You'll need to travel around the country, meeting with potential recruits and convincing them to join your cause. It won't be easy, but if you can pull it off, you'll have the army you need to liberate France. If you chose to lead the British, you've got a lot on your plate. The country is at war, and you're responsible for winning it. That means making sure the military is prepared to fight, keeping the public informed, and making sure the economy is running smoothly. It won't be easy, but if you can pull it off, you'll go down in history as one of Britain's greatest leaders. Your first order of business is to make sure the military is ready to fight. That means boosting production of tanks, planes, and other equipment, as well as training new recruits. You'll also need to keep the public informed of the progress of the war. That means making sure they have access to accurate information and that they know what role they can play in the war effort. Finally, you need to make sure the economy is running smoothly. That means keeping factories producing goods and making sure there's enough food and other supplies for everyone. It won't be easy, but if you can pull it off, you'll go down in history as one of Britain's greatest leaders.